I'm Myra, 29 years old, and 3 weeks ago, I got married without my parents there. Years ago, my parents spent $127,000 on my brother Derek's wedding, flew in relatives from 3 states, rented out a country club, hired a 12-piece band. But when I announced my engagement to Nathan, a man who loves me more than I ever thought possible, my father looked me in the eye and said, "Follow my rules or pay for it yourself." So I paid for it myself. What my parents didn't expect was who would show up on my guest list. CEOs, partners at top law firms, a former senator, people they'd spent their whole lives trying to impress. And when the truth about their so-called wedding fund came out, well, let's just say some secrets don't stay buried forever. Before I continue, if you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely want to hear more. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'd love to know who's listening. Now, let me take you back 6 months ago to the night Nathan got down on one knee. My name is Myra Wells. I'm a senior accountant at a financial consulting firm in Boston. I have a corner office with a view of the harbor, a 401k that would make my college self weep with joy, and exactly zero debt. I tell you this not to brag, but because it matters. Because for 29 years, my family treated me like I was one bad decision away from needing to be rescued. My parents, Richard and Linda Wells, live in a 3-bedroom colonial in Worcester. Dad retired from middle management at a manufacturing company 5 years ago. Mom worked part-time in administration until I was in high school, then stopped. They're not poor, they're not rich. They're the kind of comfortable that comes with a paid-off mortgage and a vacation to Florida every other year. My brother Derek is 4 years older than me. Golden child. Star quarterback in high school, business degree from UMass. Sales manager at a tech company that sounds more impressive than his salary suggests. 3 years ago, Derek married his college girlfriend, Brittany. The wedding was at Hillcrest Country Club. 250 guests, prime rib and lobster, an ice sculpture shaped like their initials. My parents paid for everything, $127,000. I know the exact number because my mother mentioned it at least 15 times during the reception. We saved for this since Derek was born, she told anyone who would listen, champagne glass in hand. That's what parents do. I stood in the corner that night in a bridesmaid dress that wasn't my color, watching my father give a toast about investing in family. And I thought, okay. When it's my turn, things will be different. They'll see I'm worth investing in too. I was so naive. I met Nathan Whitmore at a financial compliance conference 2 years ago. He was there representing his law firm, Morrison and Whitmore LLP, and I was there trying not to fall asleep during a panel on tax code revisions. He caught me yawning. I caught him laughing at me for it. We ended up getting coffee, then dinner, then somehow talking until the hotel bar closed. Nathan is 32, partner at his family's firm. Sharp jaw, kind eyes, the sort of quiet confidence that comes from never having to prove himself to anyone. But here's what I love most about him. He listens. When I talk, he actually hears me. His family is different from mine. The first time I met his mother, Eleanor, was at their home in Beacon Hill. I wore my best blazer, rehearsed conversation topics in the car. I was terrified. The house was beautiful. Old money beautiful, with oil paintings and a library that smelled like leather and history. But Eleanor answered the door herself, wearing a simple cashmere sweater and no makeup. She hugged me before I could even introduce myself. "Nathan talks about you constantly," she said. "I feel like I already know you." Dinner wasn't catered. Eleanor cooked, roast chicken with rosemary, vegetables from a farmer's market, a lemon tart she'd made that afternoon. We ate in the kitchen, not the formal dining room, and she asked me about my work, my hobbies, my dreams. No one in my family had ever asked me about my dreams. When Nathan drove me home that night, I cried in his passenger seat. "What's wrong?" he asked, alarmed. "Nothing," I said. "That's the problem. Nothing's wrong. Your family is just... they're so kind." He squeezed my hand. They already love you, Myra. You're family now. I didn't know how much that would mean until later. Nathan proposed on a Thursday evening in October. Nothing extravagant, just the two of us on the rooftop of our favorite restaurant, city lights glittering below, his grandmother's ring in a velvet box. I said yes before he finished the question. The next morning, I called my parents. My hands were shaking. Despite everything, despite all the years of being overlooked, I still wanted them to be happy for me. "Mom, Dad, I have news," I said. "Nathan proposed. We're engaged." There was a pause. Then my mother squealed, actually squealed, and I heard her calling for my father. "Richard, Myra's getting married!" For one beautiful moment, it felt like things might be different. My mother asked about the ring. My father asked about Nathan's job. They sounded proud. "We'll support you, sweetheart," my mother said, "just like we did for Derek. We'll help with the wedding." That night, she sent me an email. I still have it. I screenshotted it the moment it arrived because something in me, some instinct I didn't want to acknowledge, told me I might need proof someday. The email read, "Myra, your father and I discussed it. We want to contribute $100,000 toward your wedding, just like we promised when you were little. We're so happy for you. Love, Mom." $100,000. In writing. With a timestamp. I sat at my desk in my corner office looking at that email and I let myself believe. I let myself think that maybe I'd been wrong all those years. Maybe they did value me the same as Derek. Maybe I'd been too sensitive, too quick to notice slights that weren't really there. That belief lasted exactly 3 weeks. Jessica Torres has been my best friend since freshman year of college. She's also the most talented wedding planner in New England, owner of Elegant Affairs, with a client list that includes tech billionaires and old money dynasties. But I knew her when she was a broke 22-year-old with a dream and no startup capital. "Remember when I lent you that money?" I asked over lunch, the week after my engagement. She laughed, setting down her glass of sparkling water. We were at a cafe in Back Bay, surrounded by women in Hermes scarves and men in custom suits. Jessica fit right in. She had the kind of effortless polish that made people assume she'd always had money. "Myra, you gave me $15,000 with 0 interest and told me to pay you back whenever. That's not a loan, that's a lifeline." "Well," I said, "I'm calling in my favor. I need a wedding planner." Her eyes lit up. "Finally, I've been waiting for this moment for 2 years. Tell me everything. Theme, venue, guest count." I told her the vision Nathan and I had discussed. Intimate, elegant, child-free. Maybe 80 guests. An outdoor ceremony at a vineyard in Napa, where Nathan's family had connections. "Child-free," Jessica repeated, nodding. "Smart. Nothing ruins a ceremony like a screaming toddler during the vows. But," she hesitated, "your family is pretty traditional, right? That might be an issue." I waved my hand. "They'll understand. My parents want this to be special. Mom already emailed about contributing to the budget." Jessica looked at me with something like pity. "Myra, I've been doing this for 8 years. Traditional families and child-free weddings? That combination almost never goes smoothly." I should have listened to her. The dinner was my father's idea. "Come over Sunday," he said on the phone. "Your mother's making pot roast. We'll discuss the wedding plans." I brought Nathan. He wore a button-down and his most diplomatic smile. My parents' dining room hadn't changed since I was a child. Same faded wallpaper, same humming fluorescent light, same framed photo of Derek's high school football glory days on the wall. We made it through appetizers before my father cleared his throat. "We've given this a lot of thought," he said, pulling a folded piece of paper from his shirt pocket, "and we've put together some guidelines for the wedding." Guidelines? He actually called them guidelines. He smoothed the paper on the table. I recognized his handwriting. Cramped, precise, the same penmanship he'd used on report card comments when I was young. "Myra needs to apply herself more." "Rule 1, he read. "All family must be invited. Both sides. That means your great Aunt Marge, your cousin Tommy's kids, the Hendersons from church, everyone. I felt Nathan tense beside me. Rule 2. No child-free wedding. Children are part of family. Rule 3. No destination wedding. The ceremony stays local. Rule 4. We have final approval over the guest list. Rule 5. The ceremony will be at St. Catherine's. It's where your mother and I were married. He looked up satisfied, like he'd just presented a reasonable business proposal. My mother nodded beside him. These are the same rules Derek followed. It's only fair. I looked at the list. 200 guests. A church I hadn't attended since high school. Every screaming child and judgmental relative I'd spent my adult life avoiding. And if I don't agree? I asked quietly. My father's expression didn't change. Then you pay for it yourself. I tried. God, I tried. Dad, the child-free policy isn't about excluding anyone, I explained, keeping my voice calm. Nathan's nephew ruined his best friend's ceremony last year, knocked over the unity candle, started crying during the vows. The couple was devastated. We just want to avoid that. My father didn't blink. Children are family. Okay, what about a compromise? I pressed on. Children can come to the reception, just not the ceremony. That way, no. Nathan squeezed my knee under the table. A warning. Don't push. The guest list, I tried again. 200 people is a lot. What if we invited immediate family and close friends? Maybe 100? My mother let out a sharp laugh. 100. Myra, I've already told Aunt Marge, Uncle Tom, the Hendersons, the Fitzgeralds. Wait. I stared at her. You already told them? She had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Well, yes. When you announced the engagement, people asked. I couldn't just say nothing. You invited people to my wedding without asking me? I didn't invite them. I just mentioned. Linda told them they'd be receiving invitations, my father cut in. Which they will. That's not negotiable. I sat back in my chair. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Nathan's hand was still on my knee, his grip tighter now. My mother was already planning a guest list she hadn't consulted me about. She'd made promises on my behalf to people I barely knew, and my father had written rules, actual written rules, for my own wedding. Derek didn't have to follow these rules, I said quietly. My father's face hardened. Derek didn't try to exclude family. But that wasn't true, and we both knew it. I called Derek that night from Nathan's car. Rain streaked the windshield, blurring the streetlights into smears of gold. Can you talk to them? I asked. Maybe if you explain that child-free weddings are normal now, they'd listen to you. Derek sighed. The sound of a basketball game played in the background. He always had sports on. Myra, come on. You know how they are. I know, but they respect you. If you told them... Look, his voice dropped. You know Mom and Dad had a separate fund for me, right? Since I was a kid. They didn't have to follow any rules because there was never any question about what kind of wedding I'd have. I gripped the phone tighter. What do you mean separate fund? A pause. Too long. Derek, what fund? I thought you knew. He sounded genuinely surprised. Mom told me years ago. Dad set money aside for me when I was born. Some kind of investment account. For my future. House down payment, wedding, whatever. And me? Did they set one aside for me? Silence. Derek. I don't know, Myra. His voice was uncomfortable now. I mean, Dad always said, you know how he is, old-fashioned. He figured you'd marry someone who'd take care of that stuff, that the husband's family would pay for the wedding. That's just what he believed. The rain pounded harder. Nathan watched me from the driver's seat, concern etched on his face. So there was never a fund for me, I said flatly. The 100,000 Mom promised, they don't actually intend to give it. I don't know, maybe? Myra, I'm not trying to... It's fine, I said. Thanks for being honest. I hung up and stared at the rain. 29 years. 29 years of thinking I was part of the same family. The same love, the same future. I understood now. I never was. My father called the next day. No greeting, no preamble. I need your decision, Myra. The rules stand. Take them or leave them. I was at my desk, reviewing quarterly reports. My corner office, my harbor view, the life I'd built entirely on my own. I have a question first, I said. Did you give Derek these same rules? Silence. Did you require him to invite 200 people? Did you demand final approval of his guest list? Did you threaten to withdraw funding if he didn't comply? Derek understood family values. That's not an answer. My father's voice went cold. Derek is my son. He's carrying on the family name. You're marrying into another family. The Whitmores will be your family now. That's how it works. There it was. Finally. The truth he'd never quite said out loud. So because I'm the daughter, I'm worth less. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. In the background, I heard my mother's voice. Richard, tell her she's being dramatic. Mom, I said, cutting in. I heard you. And I'm not being dramatic, I'm being clear. My father took a breath. This is our final offer. Accept the conditions or fund the wedding yourself. We won't be manipulated by guilt or modern nonsense. I thought about the email my mother had sent, the promise of $100,000, the timestamp I'd screenshotted. I thought about Derek's accidental confession, the fund that existed for him and never for me. I thought about Eleanor Whitmore, who'd hugged me the first time we met and asked about my dreams. I understand, Dad, I said. I'll fund it myself. And I hung up before he could respond. Nathan found me on the couch that evening, still in my work clothes, staring at nothing. He sat beside me, not speaking, just present, waiting until I was ready. They never planned to help me, I said finally. The whole thing, the promise, the email, it was conditional from the start. They wanted control, not to support me. Nathan pulled me close. Then we do this ourselves. We don't need their money, Myra. We have each other. It's not about the money, my voice cracked. It's that they think I'm worth less than Derek. They've always thought that. And I kept hoping I was wrong. The next morning, Eleanor called. Nathan told me what happened, she said. Her voice was warm, concerned, but not pitying. I want you to know something. When I married James, my own parents disapproved. They thought I was marrying beneath them, a young lawyer with no family connections. They refused to contribute to the wedding. I blinked. I didn't know that. James's mother gave us $10,000. It was everything she had. She said, "Love doesn't come with conditions." I've never forgotten that. I heard her take a breath. Myra, I'd like to contribute $50,000 to your wedding. No conditions, no rules. This isn't charity. It's what family does. And you are family. Eleanor, I can't. You can. You will. Her tone was gentle but firm. I had someone do this for me once. Now I'm doing it for you. Please let me. A week later, a check arrived with a handwritten note on ivory stationery, the paper thick and heavy in my hands. Love doesn't come with conditions. Welcome to the family, sweetheart. Eleanor. I cried for an hour. But for the first time in weeks, they were good tears. If you've made it this far, maybe you understand what I was feeling. That moment when you realize your family's love came with an asterisk you never knew about. Let me be clear about something. I don't need their money. Nathan and I could pay for this wedding twice over. But that's not the point. The point is that they gave Derek $127,000 with a smile and a toast. And they're offering me conditions and ultimatums. This was never about the money. It's about whether I matter as much as my brother. And I have my answer. Now, back to 3 months before the wedding. The call started the week after I told my father I'd pay for the wedding myself. First, it was Aunt Marge. Myra, sweetheart, your mother says you're not inviting family to the wedding? That can't be right. Then Uncle Tom. I heard you're doing some kind of exclusive thing? What's this about no kids allowed? Then Darlene Henderson from church, who I hadn't spoken to in 15 years. Your poor mother is beside herself. She says you've shut her out completely. I tried to explain. Child-free was a choice many couples made. We wanted an intimate ceremony. This wasn't a rejection of anyone. No one listened. My phone buzzed constantly. Missed calls, voicemails, text messages from cousins I'd barely spoken to since childhood, all with the same theme. How could you do this to your parents? Then my mother posted on Facebook. She didn't name me directly, she didn't have to. It breaks my heart when children forget everything their parents sacrificed for them. We gave everything, and this is how we're repaid. Prayers appreciated. Within an hour, it had 47 comments. Relatives I hadn't seen in decades offering sympathy. Friends of my mother's from church expressing shock. A cousin commenting, "So sorry, Aunt Linda. Some kids just don't understand family values." I sat in my office, phone in hand, watching the notifications roll in. My mother had turned my wedding into a public referendum on my character. She'd made herself the victim before I'd even sent a single invitation. Nathan found me scrolling through the comments at midnight. "Turn it off," he said gently. "They're performing. This isn't about you. It's about them looking like martyrs." He was right. I knew he was right, but it still hurt. My mother showed up at my office on a Tuesday. I was in a meeting when my assistant knocked on the glass door, her face apologetic. "There's a woman at reception. She says she's your mother. She's making a scene." I excused myself and walked to the lobby. My mother stood at the reception desk, tissues clutched in her hand, mascara streaking her cheeks. 3 of my colleagues had stopped to watch from the hallway. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "Myra," she grabbed my arm. "We need to talk, please. I'm begging you." The receptionist, a 24-year-old named Chloe who'd only been with the company 3 months, stared at us with wide eyes. "Let's talk in the conference room," I said quietly. I led her down the hall, past the glass-walled offices, feeling every pair of eyes on my back. My mother's heels clicked against the marble floor. She was still crying, theatrical tears, the kind that came easily and dried quickly. I closed the conference room door. "You need to change your mind," she said immediately. The tears had stopped. "This has gone far enough. Your father can't sleep. I can't eat. You're tearing this family apart. Mom, you posted about me on Facebook. You called all of my relatives and told them, because you left me no choice." Her voice rose. "You're embarrassing us. Everyone knows about this ridiculous child-free rule. People are asking questions." "Then tell them the truth. Tell them you offered me conditional money with a list of demands and I declined." Her eyes narrowed. "That's a very selfish way to look at it." "Please leave," I said. "I won't discuss this at my workplace." I held the door open. She gathered her purse, her coat. At the threshold, she turned. "You'll regret this, Myra. Mark my words." The email from my father arrived that Friday. Subject, final words. I opened it at my desk, coffee growing cold beside my keyboard. The message was long. 3 full paragraphs of grievances I'd heard variations of my entire life. He listed every sacrifice they'd made for me. The braces when I was 12. The car insurance they'd paid through college. The time they drove 4 hours to watch me graduate. As if attending their daughter's graduation was an extraordinary act of generosity rather than a basic parental expectation. Then came the final paragraph. "You have made your choice clear. You've chosen Nathan and his wealthy family over the people who raised you. If that's your decision, then we're done. Don't expect us to show up and pretend everything is fine. If you proceed with this wedding without following our conditions, we will not attend, and you can forget about being part of this family." I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to Nathan and to his friend Michael, a family law attorney at the firm. "Keep this," Michael said when he called me an hour later. "You probably won't need it for anything legal, but documentation matters. If this ever becomes a he said, she said situation about who cut off whom, you have the timestamp." I printed the email. I put it in a manila folder labeled Family Documentation, the same folder where I'd saved my mother's original promise of $100,000. 2 emails, 2 timestamps, one promising support, one threatening abandonment. The gap between them told the whole story of my family better than I ever could. That night, Nathan held me while I stared at the ceiling. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I want to have our wedding," I said, "our way, and I want to stop pretending they'll ever change." I wrote the response at 2 in the morning. Nathan was asleep beside me, one arm draped over my waist. The bedroom was dark except for the glow of my laptop screen. "Dad, I've read your email. I understand your position, and I respect your right to make your own choices. The wedding will proceed as planned. You and Mom are welcome to attend as guests. There will be no special roles, no speeches, no reserved parent of the bride seating. But you are welcome. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this because I've realized that accepting your conditions would mean starting my marriage by abandoning my own boundaries. I can't do that. I hope you'll reconsider. I hope you'll choose to be part of this day, even if it's not on your terms. But I won't beg. Love, Myra." I hit send. His response came 10 minutes later. He must have been awake too. "If we can't be treated as your parents, we won't be there. This is your choice, not ours. Remember that." I closed the laptop. In the darkness, I felt the weight of what I'd just done. I'd drawn a line. I'd refused to cross it. And my parents had walked away. Nathan stirred beside me. "Hey," he murmured. "What's wrong?" I told them they could come as guests. No special treatment. They said no. He pulled me closer. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." I was surprised to find I wasn't crying. "I'm not sorry. I'm sad, but I'm not sorry." There was something almost peaceful about it. The finality. No more hoping. No more wondering if this time would be different. They'd made their choice. Now I would make mine. The weeks that followed were the hardest. I woke up at 3 in the morning, heart pounding, mind racing with doubts. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm the villain in this story? What if I'm destroying my family over a guest list? My relatives had mostly stopped calling. The silence was worse than the pressure. I'd been excommunicated, it seemed, without a formal announcement. I lost 6 pounds. Nathan started making me smoothies because I couldn't stomach solid food before noon. One night, I found myself in the bathroom crying so hard I couldn't breathe, while Nathan waited on the other side of the door, helpless. "I don't know if I'm doing the right thing," I choked out. I kept thinking about the good memories. They existed. They must have existed. My father teaching me to ride a bike. My mother braiding my hair before school. The watch my dad gave me at graduation. A slim gold Seiko that I still kept in its velvet box on my dresser. I never wore it anymore, but I couldn't throw it away either. Was I being selfish? Was I punishing my parents for not loving me the way I wanted to be loved? One morning, I typed a text to my mother. "Can we talk? Maybe there's a middle ground." I stared at it for 20 minutes. Then I deleted it. Because I remembered the Facebook post. The relatives recruited to call me. The scene at my office. The email from my father, promising to cut me off if I didn't comply. This wasn't a disagreement about wedding details. This was a power struggle. And if I gave in now, I'd be giving in forever. I put down my phone. I went to work. I kept going. Derek texted me on a Sunday. "Can we meet coffee? I want to help." I almost said no. But some part of me, the part that still remembered my big brother letting me tag along to the arcade when we were kids, wanted to believe he meant it. We met at a cafe near Fenway. Derek was already there when I arrived, wearing a wrinkled polo and nursing a black coffee. He looked tired. His golden child glow had faded somewhere along the way. "Hey." He stood to hug me. "Thanks for coming." We sat. He fidgeted with his coffee cup. "Look," he said. Mom and Dad are really hurting. They feel like you've abandoned them. Did they send you here? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. Derek, I didn't abandon anyone. Dad sent me an email saying if I don't follow their rules, I'm out of the family. I said I'd welcome them as guests. They refused. Maybe you could just give a little? You know how they are. They're old-fashioned. If you just invited Aunt Marge and a few cousins. Derek, I leaned forward. Let me ask you something. When you got married, did they give you a list of requirements? Did they threaten to withdraw funding if you didn't comply? He looked away. No, I answered for him. They didn't, because you're the son, and I'm just the daughter who's supposed to be grateful for whatever crumbs she gets. Derek shifted uncomfortably. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's true. He finished his coffee in silence. When he stood to leave, he paused. I hope you know what you're doing, Myra, because once you burn this bridge, there's no going back. I watched him walk away. He wasn't wrong, but the bridge was already on fire. I just hadn't been the one to light the match. That evening, Nathan found me on the couch, staring at my phone. Derek? He guessed. Yeah, he tried to play peacemaker, except his version of peace means I surrender. Nathan sat beside me. He didn't try to fix it. He never did. He just waited. I keep second-guessing myself, I admitted, wondering if I'm being stubborn, if I should just give in and invite everyone and smile through the whole thing. Do you want to do that? No. The answer came immediately. No, I don't. Then don't. He pulled me against his side. Myra, you've spent your whole life trying to earn something that should have been given freely. Your parents' approval, their love. You worked harder, achieved more, asked for less, and it was never enough. Because it was never about what you did. It was about who you are. I closed my eyes. You are not the problem, he said quietly. You never were. The next morning, Eleanor called. I heard you had a rough week, she said. No preamble, no small talk. Nathan told you? He's worried. So am I. She paused. Myra, when I chose to marry James against my parents' wishes, I lost them for 3 years. 3 years of silence. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. How did you get through it? By remembering that I wasn't rejecting them. They were rejecting me for making my own choice. There's a difference. Her voice softened. You're not destroying anything, sweetheart. You're just finally refusing to pretend the cracks weren't already there. That night, I looked at the engagement photo on our wall, Nathan and me laughing in the Boston Common, golden leaves swirling around us. I didn't need my parents' permission to be happy. I just needed to give myself permission instead. Jessica spread the final plans across her conference table like a general preparing for battle. Okay, she said, eyes gleaming. Let's talk about your dream wedding. The venue. A private vineyard estate in Napa Valley, rolling hills, old-growth vines, a stone terrace overlooking the valley. Nathan's family had connections with the owners. We'd gotten a rate that would have been impossible otherwise. The guest list, 85 people, carefully curated, no obligation invites, no distant relatives I'd never spoken to, no screaming children. The budget, $90,000. Nathan and I contributed $40,000 from our savings. Eleanor's gift covered $50,000. Jessica, true to her word, was providing her services at cost, normally a $30,000 value, now included as her wedding gift to us. Child-free, Jessica confirmed. Child-free. Ceremony at sunset? Golden hour, Nathan's one request. She grinned. This is going to be my finest work, I hope you know that. I looked at the mood board she'd created. Clean lines, white flowers, soft lighting, elegant simplicity. Nothing gaudy, nothing overdone, just beauty. What about your family? Jessica asked carefully. Any changes on that front? I shook my head. They made their choice. Okay. She made a note. I'll have security briefed just in case. Sometimes people show up uninvited to these things. I hadn't thought about that. You think they'd crash the wedding? I think people do unexpected things when they realize they're not in control. She looked at me over her glasses. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. That's my motto. I nodded slowly. The possibility hadn't occurred to me that my parents might try to force their way in. But Jessica had been doing this for 8 years. She knew things I didn't. The invitation list was a document I hadn't shown anyone outside of Nathan and Jessica. But as I reviewed it one final evening, I realized something. This wasn't just a wedding guest list, it was a testament to the life I'd built. Nathan's side included the managing partner of Morrison and Whitmore, a federal judge who'd mentored him in law school, 3 partners from competing firms who'd become close friends, the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, a client Nathan had represented in a complex merger. My side included my mentor from business school, now a professor at Harvard Business School, 2 colleagues who'd become genuine friends, a former client who'd started a nonprofit with my financial advice. And then there was Eleanor's network, philanthropists, arts patrons, a former senator who served on the board of her charitable foundation. At the bottom of the list were 5 names from my family. Cousin Sarah, Derek's daughter, who'd always been kind to me. My mother's second cousin Paula, who'd sent me a supportive text after the Facebook incident. 3 other relatives who'd pointedly not joined the pile-on. I'd also invited Carol Bennett. Carol was 60, a retired accountant who'd worked with my mother at her old job decades ago. They'd stayed in touch, Christmas cards, occasional lunches. I'd always liked Carol. She had a sharp wit and sharper observations. More importantly, Carol knew things. My mother had always confided in her, about finances, about family, about the plans she and my father had made. I wasn't inviting Carol to cause trouble. I was inviting her because she was kind, and because some part of me knew that the truth has a way of surfacing when the right people are in the room. The invitations went out on a Thursday. The countdown had officially begun. Sarah posted her invitation on Instagram. That was how my mother found out. A simple photo, the envelope, the calligraphy, the location, Napa Valley, California. Sarah captioned it with a string of champagne emoji and the words, "Wedding season." My phone rang within the hour. You invited Sarah but not her mother? My mother's voice was ice. You invited your cousin's daughter, but not your own aunt? I invited people who've supported me, I said calmly. I was at home, sitting on the balcony, watching the sunset paint Boston's skyline orange. Aunt Susan spent the last 2 months calling me ungrateful. Sarah sent me a text saying she was sorry for the family drama. This is calculated. You're doing this to hurt us. I'm doing this to have the wedding I want. You made your choice, Mom. These are the consequences. A sharp intake of breath. Then, where is this vineyard anyway? How are you affording Napa Valley without our help? I didn't answer that. Who's paying for this? She pressed. Is it the Whitmores? Are they funding the whole thing? Are you letting your in-laws pay for a wedding your own parents should be paying for? Should be paying for. Not offered to pay for. Should be. As if it was still an obligation they were meeting rather than a gift they'd withdrawn. The Whitmores have been generous, I said. So have my friends. That's all I'll say about the budget. Silence. Then, in a different tone, Myra, we should talk about this in person. Maybe we can work something out. The invitation stands, Mom. You can come as a guest. The offer hasn't changed. That's not good enough. Then I'm sorry. I hung up. But the call had told me something important. They were paying attention, and they were starting to worry. I learned later what happened next from Cousin Sarah. My mother called everyone she knew. Not to apologize, not to reconcile, to investigate. She Googled the Whitmore family. She found Eleanor's foundation website, the board of directors studded with names that appeared in society pages and business journals. She found articles about James Whitmore, deceased now, but once a federal judge with a sterling reputation. She looked up Nathan on LinkedIn. Partner at 32, Harvard Law, pro bono work that had been featured in the Boston Globe. And then she looked up the vineyard. Linda called me in a panic, Sarah told me later. She was like, "Do you know what that venue costs? Do you know the kind of people who get married there?" I thought she was going to hyperventilate. My father called the following evening. His tone was different, softer, almost conciliatory. "Myra, perhaps we were too hasty. Your mother and I would like to discuss things further. Maybe we could meet for dinner this weekend." I recognized this voice. It was the voice he used when he wanted something, when he was recalibrating strategy. "What changed?" I asked. "Nothing changed. We've been reflecting. Family is family. We should be there for your wedding." Family is family. The phrase that had been used against me for months, now deployed as an olive branch. "You're welcome to attend," I said. "As guests. No speeches, no special seating, no parents of the bride roll, just guests." A long pause. "That's your final answer?" "That's always been my answer, Dad. It hasn't changed." He hung up without saying goodbye. The wedding was 3 weeks away, and my parents had finally realized they were about to be on the outside of something they couldn't control. At this point in my story, I knew something was coming. My parents didn't suddenly want to reconcile because they'd had a change of heart. They'd had a change of strategy. They'd seen the guest list, the venue, the kind of life I was building without them, and they wanted in. But would they accept my terms? Would they show up to the wedding? And what would happen when they discovered what Carol Bennett knew? Keep watching. The rehearsal dinner is next. If you're still here, drop a comment with your prediction. I'd love to hear what you think happened. The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be intimate. 30 people at a Michelin-starred restaurant overlooking the Napa vineyards. Close friends, immediate family, the people who mattered most. My parents were not on the list, which is why my heart stopped when I saw them walk through the door. My mother wore her best dress, the one she saved for funerals and fancy occasions. My father had put on a tie. They looked respectable, almost humble, standing in the foyer while the hostess consulted her seating chart with obvious confusion. "I'm the mother of the bride," I heard my mother say. "There must be some mistake." I felt Nathan's hand tighten on my arm. Around us, conversations faltered. Eleanor looked up from her champagne, her expression unreadable. "I'll handle this," I said. I walked over. My heels clicked against the hardwood. Every eye in the room followed. "Mom, Dad," I kept my voice low, steady. "You weren't on the guest list for tonight." "We're your parents, Myra." My mother's voice trembled, performative distress. "We have every right to be here. We flew 3,000 miles. You weren't invited. We're here to support you. Isn't that what you wanted?" Jessica materialized beside me, tablet in hand. "Ma'am, sir, if I could speak with you privately for a moment." My father's face reddened. "We don't need to speak privately. We need to be let into our daughter's event." Eleanor rose from her seat and crossed the room. She moved like water, graceful, unhurried, impossible to ignore. "Richard, Linda," her voice was warm but firm, "perhaps we could discuss this in the private dining room. I'd hate for this to become a scene." My father looked at Eleanor, at her pearls, her posture, her quiet authority, and some of the bluster drained from his face. "Fine," he said tightly. "Let's talk." The private dining room was small, a table for 6, wine bottles lining the walls, soft lighting that couldn't soften the tension. My parents sat on one side. Nathan, Eleanor, and I sat on the other. My father spoke first. "We came to support our daughter. That's all." "You came uninvited," I said, "after sending me an email saying you'd cut me off if I didn't obey your conditions." "That was a misunderstanding. I have the email, Dad." I pulled out my phone. "Would you like me to read it? If you proceed with this wedding without following our conditions, we will not attend, and you can forget about being part of this family." "That's what you wrote." His face went pale. My mother cut in. "We were hurt. We said things we didn't mean." "Then why didn't you apologize? Why did you show up at my office? Why did you post about me on Facebook? Why did you recruit relatives to pressure me?" Silence. Eleanor spoke, her voice gentle. Richard, Linda, I understand this is difficult. Letting go of control over our children is one of the hardest things a parent can do. But what you've described, conditions, ultimatums, public shaming, that's not support, that's coercion. My mother turned on her. With all due respect, Mrs. Whitmore, this is none of your business. Myra is my family now, Eleanor said simply. That makes it my business. She's our daughter. Then act like it. Eleanor's tone didn't sharpen, but something in it made my mother fall silent. Being a parent isn't about control. It's about showing up for your child, even when they make choices you don't understand. Myra invited you to this wedding as guests. She's still inviting you. The question is whether you can accept that. My father stared at the table. My mother's eyes were wet with tears. Real ones this time, I thought. Neither of them spoke. Finally, my father stood. We won't be humiliated like this, he said. If we can't be recognized as your parents, we won't play pretend. Nobody's asking you to pretend, Dad. I'm asking you to be present, on terms that respect both of us. He shook his head. You've made your choice. You chose the Whitmores. You chose a crowd of strangers over your own flesh and blood. I chose a wedding that reflects my values. If you can't accept that, we can't. My mother rose, gathering her purse. We won't be treated like ordinary guests when we're your parents. She looked at Eleanor with something like hatred. I hope you're happy. You've turned our daughter against us. No one turned me against you, I said quietly. I made my own decision. I wish you could see the difference. My mother's lip trembled. You'll regret this, Myra. On your wedding day, when you look for us and we're not there, you'll regret it. She turned and walked out. My father followed. I watched them go. The door swung shut. The click echoed in the silent room. Nathan wrapped his arm around me. Eleanor reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm sorry, she murmured. Don't be. My voice was steady, but inside something ached. They made their choice, just like I made mine. We returned to the main dining room. The guests had resumed their conversations, though several pairs of eyes followed us with concern. Carol Bennett was sitting near the end of the table, a glass of wine in hand. She watched me walk in. Our eyes met, and she gave me a small, understanding nod, as if she knew something was coming, as if she knew what I didn't yet. The rest of the rehearsal dinner passed in a blur of toasts and laughter, but my mind kept drifting to my parents' retreating backs. Nathan gave a speech. Eleanor gave a speech. Jessica corralled everyone for a group photo on the terrace, the vineyard stretching golden and infinite behind us. You okay? Nathan asked quietly as we posed. Yeah. I smiled for the camera. I think I am. Later that night, alone in our room at the resort, I stared at the ceiling while Nathan slept. I thought about what my mother had said. You'll regret this. But I already knew the truth. I would regret it if they stayed away. I would regret it if they came and made a scene. I would regret it no matter what, because there was no version of this story where everyone got what they wanted. The only thing I could control was whether I regretted my own choices. And I didn't. Not the boundaries I'd set, not the guest list I'd made, not the wedding I'd planned with Nathan and our real family, the one we'd chosen. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Sarah. OMG, your mom just called my mom. She's furious. She keeps saying, wait until they find out. Find out what? I stared at the message. Find out what? What could my mother possibly think she knew that would change anything? I typed back. No idea. But thanks for the heads up. I put the phone down. Tomorrow was my wedding day. Whatever my mother thought she had left to play, I would deal with it tomorrow. Tonight, I just wanted to sleep. For the first time in months, I actually could. I woke on my wedding day to sunshine streaming through the curtains and the distant sound of someone uncorking champagne. Jessica appeared with her team at 8 a.m. sharp. Hairstylist, makeup artist, a woman whose sole job was apparently to steam my dress until it was literally perfect. Today is your day, Jessica said, handing me a mimosa. Whatever happened yesterday, forget it. Today is about you and Nathan. I let them fuss over me. The dress was Monique Lhuillier, a gift from Eleanor, deceptively simple in the way only truly expensive things can be. French lace, silk lining, a train that whispered across the floor. At 4 p.m., I stood at the door of the bridal suite and looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back was someone I almost didn't recognize, not because of the makeup or the dress, but because of the expression in her eyes. Calm, certain, ready. The ceremony was at 5 p.m. 85 guests gathered on the stone terrace as the sun began its descent toward the vineyard hills. White roses lined the aisle. A string quartet played something soft and aching. Nathan waited for me under a wooden pergola draped with greenery and fairy lights. When he saw me, his eyes went bright with tears. I walked down the aisle alone. No father to give me away. I hadn't asked anyone to fill that role. I didn't need to be given. I was giving myself, of my own free will, to the man I loved. In the front row, I'd left 2 chairs empty. My parents' seats, just in case they were empty. And as I took Nathan's hands and looked into his eyes, I realized something. I wasn't sad anymore. I was free. The reception was beautiful. Dinner under the stars, fairy lights strung above the long tables, wine from the vineyard's own cellar flowing freely. I was dancing with Eleanor when Sarah found me. Myra. She tugged my elbow. You need to hear this. Carol Bennett just told me something crazy. I excused myself and followed Sarah to a quiet corner of the garden. Carol was there, wine glass in hand, looking troubled. I'm sorry to bring this up on your wedding day, Carol said, but I've been sitting on this for hours and it's eating at me. What is it? Carol took a breath. Your mother and I worked together for 15 years. We were close. She told me things, about money, about family plans. I nodded. I knew this. A few years ago, she told me about a fund, a savings account she and your father had set up when the kids were young, for the children's weddings. My stomach dropped. She told me the amount, Carol continued. $150,000. She said they'd been adding to it since Derek was a toddler. 50 for college, 100 for weddings, split evenly. Split evenly. My voice was barely a whisper. That's what she said. 75,000 each, for both children. Carol shook her head. But then I heard what's been happening. How they paid over 100,000 for Derek's wedding and told you there was no fund. And I thought, that can't be right. I leaned against a trellis, my heart pounding. $150,000, split evenly. That's what my mother had told Carol, but Derek had gotten $127,000, and I had gotten nothing. I'm so sorry, Myra, Carol said softly. I thought you should know. I didn't tell anyone else, not right away, but Carol did. I don't think she meant to cause trouble. She was just being Carol, honest to a fault, the kind of person who can't let hypocrisy stand unchallenged. And when she went back to the table and Aunt Paula asked why she looked so serious, Carol told her. Words spread like wine spilling across a white tablecloth. By the time I was cutting the cake with Nathan, I noticed the whispers. Guests huddled in small groups, glancing at me with a mix of sympathy and shock. Sarah was on her phone, texting furiously. Something's happening, Nathan murmured. I know. I caught fragments of conversation as we moved through the crowd. 150,000. Told Carol years ago. And they gave Derek everything? No wonder they didn't come. Nathan's partner Michael approached us, expression grave. Myra, I just heard something interesting from one of the guests. About a family fund? It's true, I said quietly. My mother told Carol Bennett about it years ago. They had money for both of us. They just chose to spend it all on Derek. Michael's jaw tightened. And they had the nerve to put conditions on giving you anything. The truth I'd suspected, that Derek had accidentally confirmed, was now spreading through the wedding like wildfire. And I hadn't done anything to make it happen. I hadn't exposed them. I hadn't confronted them. I just invited Carol Bennett to my wedding. The same Carol my mother had trusted with family secrets. The same Carol who believed that truth should never be hidden. Sometimes justice doesn't require revenge. Sometimes you just have to step out of the way and let the truth do its work. 3,000 miles away, my parents' phone was ringing. I learned this later from Sarah, who'd called her mother, who'd called my mother immediately after hearing Carol's story. "Is it true?" Aunt Susan demanded. "Did you really have 150,000 saved? Did you give Derek all of it and nothing to Myra?" My mother, I'm told, tried to lie. Carol misunderstood. "It wasn't like that. Linda, Carol is a certified accountant. She remembered numbers. She remembered you bragging about the fund at lunch 10 years ago. It was our money. We had the right to decide." "You had the right to lie to your daughter? To pretend there was nothing when there was plenty?" My father got on the phone, tried his stern voice. "This is a private family matter." "Private?" Aunt Susan laughed. "You made it public when you put Linda's Facebook sob story in front of everyone. You made it public when you called every relative to complain about Myra's choices. And now you're caught, Richard. Everyone knows." The calls kept coming. Uncle Tom, Cousin Paula, even Carol herself, ringing to say she hoped she hadn't caused too much trouble, but she couldn't stay silent when she knew the truth. Meanwhile, I danced with my husband under the stars. I didn't know about the phone calls yet. I didn't know that my mother was crying in her living room in Massachusetts while I laughed at toasts in Napa Valley. I only knew that I was happy. I was surrounded by people who loved me, actually loved me, without conditions or calculations. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew this was never about revenge. It was about finally being free. We spent 2 weeks in Italy for our honeymoon. The Amalfi Coast, just as we'd dreamed, crumbling villas, lemon groves, sunsets that looked like paintings. I turned off my phone for most of it. Nathan did too. When we landed back in Boston, reality came flooding in. 17 missed calls from Derek, 4 from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, a voicemail from Carol apologizing profusely for stirring things up, and 1 text from my mother. "You've destroyed this family. I hope you're proud of yourself." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I put my phone away and went home with my husband. Over the next few days, I learned what had happened while we were gone. The family had splintered. Aunts who'd once parroted my mother's complaints were now questioning everything. Cousins who'd called me ungrateful were reassessing their loyalty. Derek had gotten the worst of it. His wife Brittany had started asking questions. "If your parents gave you $127,000 for the wedding, where did that money actually come from?" "He's stressed," Sarah told me over lunch. "People keep asking him why he got everything and you got nothing. I don't think he ever thought about it before." "Is that my fault?" I asked. Sarah shook her head. "No, it's his parents' fault for putting him in that position." My mother had deactivated her Facebook. My father wasn't returning calls from extended family. They hadn't reached out to me. Not once. Not to apologize, not to explain, not to reconcile. The silence said everything. And as much as it hurt, because it still hurt, would probably always hurt a little, I was okay. I had built a new life. I had chosen my own family. And I was finally free. Months passed. The scandal, because that's what it had become, at least within the Wells extended family, gradually faded into an uncomfortable silence. People stopped talking about it directly, but the knowledge lingered like smoke. My parents lost their position as the family elders who gave advice at holidays and mediated disputes. People stopped calling them. Derek's marriage hit rough waters. I heard through Sarah that Brittany had started questioning a lot of things. Not just the wedding money, but the pattern of favoritism, the expectations, the family dynamics she'd never examined before. I wasn't happy about any of it. I know that might be hard to believe. People love a revenge story where the victim watches their tormentors suffer and feels satisfied, but I didn't feel satisfied. I felt tired. One afternoon, I found myself standing at my desk, holding the velvet box with the watch my father had given me at graduation. That gold Seiko that I'd kept but never worn. I opened it. The watch face caught the light. It was a nice watch. Not expensive, not like the things Eleanor wore. But it had meant something once. A moment when my father had looked at me with something like pride. I closed the box and put it back in the drawer. I didn't throw it away. Some wounds don't heal by destroying the things that caused them. They heal by acknowledging what was, mourning what could have been, and choosing to move forward anyway. Nathan found me staring out the window that evening, the city lights of Boston glittering below. "Thinking about them?" he asked. "Sometimes," I admitted. "Is that strange?" "No." He wrapped his arms around me from behind. "They're still your parents. That doesn't go away." "No," I agreed. "It doesn't. I don't know if my parents will ever change. Part of me still hopes they will. Part of me has accepted they won't. What I know for certain is this. I spent 29 years trying to earn something that should have been given freely. Love. Acceptance. The simple acknowledgement that I was worth as much as my brother. I bent myself into shapes trying to please them. I made myself small. I accepted conditions and ultimatums and casual cruelties because I thought that was just how families worked. It took losing them to realize I'd never really had them. Not the way I wanted, not the way I deserved. But here's the thing about building your own family. You get to choose. Nathan chose me. Eleanor chose me. Jessica chose me. Carol Bennett, in her own way, chose me by refusing to let lies stand. And I chose myself. That's the real ending of this story. Not revenge, not triumph, not even justice, really. Just freedom. The freedom to set boundaries and enforce them. The freedom to love people who love you back without asterisks. The freedom to walk down an aisle alone because you don't need to be given away. If you're watching this, and you're in a similar situation, if your family makes you feel like you're not enough, like their love comes with terms and conditions, like you're always one wrong step away from being cut off, I want you to know something. You are worthy of unconditional love. And if the people who were supposed to give it to you won't, you have the right to find it elsewhere. You have the right to build your own family. You have the right to choose yourself. I'm Myra Wells. I'm 29 years old, and I finally know what it means to be free. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to set boundaries with people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, please consider liking and sharing this video. Your support means more than you know. Subscribe to the channel if you want more stories like this. I have plenty more to share. And leave me a comment below. Have you ever had to choose yourself over someone else's expectations? I want to hear your story. We're all in this together. Check the description for more videos. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves.